You're listening to She Speaks, a Let Her Speak podcast that celebrates women's fearlessness, resiliency, and readiness to change the world.
My name is Drocella MugoreWera, and I am the America's #1 perspective in Tombero engineer. So I want people to know that if they align their vision, their mindset, their beliefs, and actions to their perspective, they can thrive. And I'm known as the faith-to-faith speaker, coach, and trainer. The last 2 years for me have been motivating.
Motivating. Okay. So what has been, so I know a little bit of what happened the last 2 years, but tell us about the journey that you've been on since we last recorded an interview with you.
So last we recorded an interview with me, I was telling you that I was the executive director for Bridge Refugee Services, which is the only refugee settlement agency in East Tennessee, and that welcomed me in Knoxville in 2009. And I was trying to build the business aside in my free time. And I am very happy with the work Bridge does. But I felt like I had a call to do something bigger, even having a global impact. And I was thinking that if I'm true to myself, I have to shift and do the business full time. June the 10th, 2022 was my last day at Bridge, and I dedicated all my time to be a full-time business owner. But I will continue to be an advocate and ambassador for refugees and immigrants integration in our community, but in the whole world too.
Yeah, and I feel like that work is something that is so in alignment with just your story that I could never see that ever not being a part of your work.
Yes.
And I know there's a lot of women and a lot of men that are in a role that is either in an organization or a company, and they see that there's something more and something bigger they could do, but they just haven't quite figured that out yet. So can you talk about the process of you realizing what that meant for you?
I think writing down my dreams is one of the things that made me to think forward. I remember April 17th of 2017, I think this is where I wrote many things on my dream board, and I kept thinking about it, and I kept touching about it. And I know there are things like fear can go on your way, but fear is our daily companion. But fear should not hinder your dreams. You have to live with it, but keep chasing your dreams and see how you can do that. Because even, as you said, being a refugee is part of my identity. This is why I cannot dissociate myself with the refugee community and refugee programs. But I want to use the skills I learned from there for the use of my community members, like helping people to understand that they can be self-sufficient, how they can overcome trauma and thrive. That is one of my passions. And then I see, for example, many people who are skilled or many people who didn't discover themselves to know their worth. And that motivates me to speak, to coach, and to train people in those kind of things so they can overcome fear, trauma, poverty, and integrate. And even when you move to a new country, what do you have to take? What do you have to be mindful? What can help you to integrate so quickly? I want to share those tips and secrets. So for me, I thought that Bridge is a great organization, and I did my best. I did make it a vibrant organization in collaboration with the staff and other community partners. But I did get to the point that it was small for me. Mm-hmm. And now I want to scale up.
And I know that various people who work in the world of trying to help others see their what they could give to the world, essentially helping people see the light that's in them. Everybody has a little bit different approach to that. So I guess talking through not so much what you're telling others, but how do you work through that with yourself?
With myself, I have been told when I moved to America, I have been told that I am overqualified several times. And I did 100 applications, job applications without luck. And later on I sat down and I said, Drocella, what do you qualify for? I tried to list down my gifts and talents. But another thing that helped me a lot is also self-development. So I did invest in myself, networking, learn from successful people to see how they are challenged. They did turn their pain into purpose or things like that. So, and that motivated me. So I want to help people to discover themselves, because also my faith is always telling me that I am complete. I am enough. I'm not half. I am valued, and I want to show people that they are worthy. And I can use the beliefs, what universe is giving to them, or if they believe that God created them full, so we can discuss. And then one of the things I do also is listening more. So to understand what are the pain points, what are the problems people have, because sometimes we tend to give like medication without the right diagnosis. Yeah.
So you help kind of peel back those layers and really dive into what's at the heart of it, what's at the root of everything.
And then they discover sometimes even the limiting beliefs they didn't know about. So through dialogue, through interview, or the questions I ask them, you can see, and then sometimes they have those capabilities or gifts they don't know. It's like me when I was helping people with coaching without doing it professionally. These are the people who say, why don't you get paid for this? Because we are helping people. So they saw the potential in me. Sometimes you have potential, but other people say, oh, or you don't believe in yourself. And somebody, when they say, I believe in you, do not do this. Do not say those things which are undermining you. Those people give you a boost and courage to continue to do the work.
So one of the things that's coming to mind is, so one of the very first times that we ever really got to talk to each other was I had asked you to speak at an event during the pandemic. So it was the very first virtual event I had ever done. And it was all about breaking down your own barriers. And I remember I reached out to a few women in the community and asked, who would you recommend to be a woman to speak on this topic? And you came up and were very heavily recommended of Drocella is the person to talk about this.
I appreciate that, and I'm humbled about that.
And I think it's amazing that topic is very much a part of the work that you're doing now. And at the time, if I remember right, you weren't even really thinking about coaching at all.
No, I was not thinking about that at all. And now, like, we are doing a podcast. On my dream board, I have to have my Drocella show. I do not know when, but it will come.
Yes.
So I keep documenting my dreams, and I'm a big dreamer.
Yeah. I mean, I think it very much helps to write these things down, as I feel like just to think them, they can float out and dissipate into, to nothingness. But when you write it down, it creates more of a solid, this thing is something that I really want to happen.
Yes, I agree.
So the process of, and I know it wasn't that like you woke up one day and you're like, oh, right, all these people are telling me that they would pay me to be a coach. I should become a coach. I know it was there was a much more process to that, as well as working through this work that you were doing that you're very passionate about and you continue to be tied to. Like you said, it's a part of your identity.
Yeah.
And having to grapple with untangling that I need to step away from this role that I've been in for a while now and step out on my own. How did you approach doing that?
So I did invest, and one of my personal quotes is, if you don't invest, you don't harvest. So I invested and I hired coaches myself, speaker coach and then coaching coach. So I would learn the techniques and what it takes. For example, in the speaking industry now, I have my speaker's bio, I have my speaker's sheet. I know how to speak to event planners. So I had to know the techniques and to have the skills to do what I do. And also I expanded my network. So I do network with speakers, coaches, so I can learn the tips and learn from their mistakes too. But also I envisage to do like swaps, and I want the referrals. So that partnership and collaboration is very crucial to me. So besides hiring coaches and learning the techniques, I kept networking and referring people. So, and then those relationships, I think, will help me to go further. And one of the coaches I have in other industries, they say, you just take a decision and not focus on how it will be. So when I decided I would be a coach and a speaker, I didn't focus how will I become that. So I let the process flow. And then, sometimes you cannot run by yourself. This is what I say all the time. You have to hire a coach or a mentor to help you to get where you want to be. I don't know any successful person in the world who doesn't have a coach. So some have multiple, 2 or 3 or 4, even 5, because you grow in different sectors of industries. Yeah. So then I started to build a website. And then when I was getting ready, now I have business cards, and I learned how to build the funnels, marketing, and those things. So learning is a process. Sometimes you will not be ready 100% because you keep improving. So you start and then you put the words out. You cannot be a success and a secret at the same time. So people have to know what you do and what you care about. I will use the same strategy I used to market bridge, to tell people my goals, who am I serving, what problem I'm solving, and then people will say, hey, we need this. Or a friend of a friend will tell me, Drocella, these people may need you. But I want also to give much to this country that welcomed me and saved my life while I felt like nobody else cared about my life.
And I know that we've talked before about the American dream for people who come to this country, whether it's seeking refuge, or whether it's because they got a job offer, or whether they're escaping or whatever it is. But that, and I think we've talked a little bit about, like, does the traditional view of the American dream still exist? And I feel like, at least in my experience, a huge part of the people that, of course, I talk to are business owners. And so their American dream is that I can come here and I can create a job and I can do the things that I'm passionate about and I can make a living for myself. So when you first came here, was the notion of, what is my dream being in this new country, was that there, that inkling of, I'm going to do something eventually that is, my own business and something I can own?
I think because of trauma, and this is one of the areas when I want to help people to overcome trauma, I didn't have that big dream. I just needed safety. And then as long as I grew and I saw the potential in place, I say, yeah, I do not have just to have a mindset. I just wanted a job. I was thinking, because of my experience and skills, I will get a job that is meaningful for me. But the formula didn't work that way. But as I healed and I looked over and I created friends and, I started small, but I grew big. and that will grow bigger even. Because one of my other quotes is saying that the problem is not starting from the bottom, the problem is staying at the bottom. So I do encourage people, the listeners of this podcast, to say that the American dream still exists. It is accessible to everyone. Even if you have the limiting beliefs, you can just overcome them and be what you want to be. Do not let anything be on your way. Your dreams, because the limiting beliefs, somebody was saying, Sonia Ricotti was saying, these are the big lie. These are the things we have been told. But as I said at the beginning, everybody's complete. Everybody's worthy. They are worthy of things. Les Brown sometimes said the biggest place which is rich in the world is a cemetery. And many people go after the earth, after their life on earth, with all the things they didn't expand. And it didn't benefit them nor other people. So the American dream is real. It is real and for everyone.
I love that you brought up that you were at a place when you first came here of survival and very much a traumatic piece. And I think sometimes we don't talk so much about that when talking about going after your goals and your dreams, is that recognizing what state and stage are you in right now. And if you are in that state of survival, and I think that's brought up a lot in a lot of activism and a lot of change in that our communities that are needing the most help, they are in a state of survival every single day. That, of course, they can't flourish because they're just trying to make it to the next 24 hours.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great point that I'm glad that you really brought that up.
Yeah, and this is why, personally, I want to help young and middle-aged women to overcome trauma and thrive. Because even sometimes you have trauma, but you don't know that you have it. And with many people I did talk to, they are still struggling with trauma. They are still struggling with history. They are still struggling what the parents told them. They are still struggling what undermining words or behavior people told them, or the experiences that they lived in, and they can overcome that. They have the power within to overcome that. But they need some light, clarity from somebody else. And they believe maybe somebody would say, I believe in you. Let me show you the way. And we were talking about networking. Sometimes you have to take somebody under your wings. And if they have fear, you can tell them, how do you do that? And for people who are afraid to talk to other people, one of the things I deliver is to teach them how to talk to strangers. How do you initiate conversation with strangers? So, yeah, but everybody is worthy. Everybody is deserving. So they do not have to be held up by the fears. Fear is the deadly companion. But overcoming fear and chase your dreams is possible.
So what are some of for people who are very uncomfortable talking to strangers? Because I, of course, you and I both agree, you need to go out, you need to meet people, you need to talk. It's all about building a village around you, whatever you're doing. Yeah. So what are some of the tactics that you recommend?
So the first thing is, when you acknowledge it, you have now to have affirmations. So I want to talk to people. The way you frame it also is very important. And then even if you put the sticker notes on your mirrors in the bathroom where you wake up, I want to talk to people. I want to flourish. I want to overcome this. And when you say it over and over and over, you will get there. And then the second thing is taking action. So if you have to go to networking group, maybe you just go and you don't talk. You just observe. Or you say hello, and next time you can move another step. But I think this is what they say, faith without actions is dead. So you have to take actions. This is what I say. People have to align their perspectives with actions. And my husband, I think, is leading a book about fear, overcoming fear, to do it anyway, even if you have fear. So those are the steps, small steps. And then you have to associate yourself with people having the same problems. And how did they overcome that? Like the first group networks, and then just see how you are progressing day in and day out. And read books. I encourage people to read books also. Like when there is, in Google, there are now enough resources where you can find really resources, YouTube, that can help any challenge now you have in terms of if you have fear to talk to people. But the best way is to take action. And when your mindset is crucial, how do you change that? It means if you want to accomplish something, but you think about you are not able to talk to people, but you have to remember, you are a leader. You lead yourself. You lead the family. You have influence. You have power. So all those things that are limiting you, you can just overcome them and then accomplish your dreams. So these are the steps. And then when I tell people to initiate conversation with strangers, just talk about families. Ask them what they care about, their jobs, what they do for a living, the family, the recreation, and then how they have fun, Mm-hmm. What small things we all have common or we care about as people, so that can open up, be the door opener.
I think we've talked, I think you and I have talked about this probably more offline. I don't think we've ever recorded talking about this, but how amazing connections are formed, especially among women, and there's studies that show about how women network and the way that we form relationships is usually a much deeper connection. Yeah. And so I feel like that sometimes can be a barrier that we put up for ourselves, is that we feel like we have to be a certain title, or we have to be somebody of some social importance in order to show up to these places or introduce ourselves and be taken seriously, or to be for people to think that we're important. Mm-hmm. But I know that a lot of the spaces that at least we're in the rooms, in a lot of these networking rooms together, that it's not the case. It's more about you. Who are you? Yeah. What's your story?
So it's about you, and the world needs our good, our bad, and our ugly. And we all have all those. And we have stories and powerful stories to tell. I remember the network we were at yesterday. Mm-hmm. So for some reason, I met somebody I didn't know, new to Knoxville. I happened to know the partner is from Ukraine. I was saying I was trained in Ukraine. And then she told me that she came from Ohio. I was talking my connection with Ohio. So it's just, let it flow as organic conversation. So do not be afraid to go to network, because everybody is like you, and you are rich, and you can give. You are a giver. You are a giver. So if you go with the spirit to take, that is not a good approach. You have to say, I am a giver. I have something other people I will meet can benefit from. And everybody has that in different capacities, mm-hmm. and at the level where we are.
That is absolutely one of my favorite pieces of advice when not just talking about networking, but talking about sales. Because in the entrepreneur world, you are a seller, yes. No matter who but I really would argue every human is a salesperson to some degree. You're always trying to accomplish something, right? And when you're when you're approaching any of those conversations with what can I get from this person? A lot of times it doesn't work, or a foundational strong relationship cannot be made on taking.
Yes, and cannot be made also from the first day. Mm-hmm. So you just go, you start the conversation, and then you continue the conversation through email, meetups, texting. So, and that don't learn. So, and this is where people, for example, told me that when I went to Leadership Knoxville in 2018, they said these are the long-term relationship you will be ever mindful and reminded for. So, and I can tell that because when I have problems sometimes, or I have programs, I call the people I met in different networks. So, and then in the network marketing, they say your network is not your net worth. So, and that is true. And even for a store manager, if there will not be strangers coming into the door, and another probably thing we should talk about. I know people say, "Oh, be careful about strangers," but remember also that strangers have our lives in their hands. If my life was in the hands of two strange men, first of all, I trusted God, but I thought that they are good people. In my mindset, I say, I don't know them, but God used them to help me. Indeed happened. So strangers are the people in the store. How many strangers coming in? If they don't come, so they will not have profits. So from stranger, you make a friend, you make a partner. You know, even for us who are married, our partners were or our husbands or our wife, and they were just stranger one day to us. But remember how we did to acquaint to them, and then we became friends for life.
I mean, the consistency piece is absolutely the biggest part of it.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is not always talked about or shown in a lot of different stories. Is a lot of times you hear this is where I started and this is where I ended up. And you don't get to hear all about the day in and day out consistency of over and over and over repeating good practices constantly. And I think you're a great example of that.
And that is crucial, because if they say, how do you develop habits? Like my mentors always say, at least take 15 minutes to read a book. You know, and this is one of the richness I sometimes do not take care of or do take for granted in America. The free library system, it's something worthy, you know. And then you can drop the book here. It doesn't matter where you did pick it up. That is huge. And I just want to encourage people to help people to read. Even if we have internet and things, nothing would replace books. Nothing. And that is one of the habits I developed. And then the daily routine, if you do meditation, if you do journaling, if you do things and this. So the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is one book that I always refer to, because it does help me how to start with the end in mind, you know, and how to sharpen the sword.
Yeah. I mean, and it helps too with deciding what you say yes to, what you say no to. I mean, it all builds on itself.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I will echo too, please support your local library, because it's one of the most amazing things that I think it's taken for granted a lot.
I know.
Yeah. So one thing we were talking about, but we've talked about a few times at different meetings and things like that, is your dedication to diversity, equity, and inclusion in the work that you're doing too, of trying to come into spaces that are grappling with trying to actually, and helping them stay accountable for actually doing the work, right? And a part of that we were just talking about before we started recording was also around language and how that plays a key role in DE&I, which I think is a piece that gets forgotten about a lot in that conversation and how important that is. So can you talk a little bit about what your work entails as far as what you're trying to help achieve in that space?
In that space, I want to help with awareness, but also I can help to develop the tools. You see, speaking multiple languages is a richness too. And in the era of global economy, in the traveling here and there, I heard that in our community we have more than 100 languages spoken in our community. So how do we make sure that our offices are language access promoted, the language access is promoted, and we have tools like we have a budget line in that, in our budget. Do we have interpretation services or translation services included? Are we having on staff people who speak multiple languages? I was telling you that when I was a patient services representative and frontline, I wanted to speak languages, and one of my Russians saved somebody. They came over the counter, and they were speaking Russian, and I was listening, and nobody could understand what they said. And I told my supervisor, "Can I help them? I speak Russian." She was surprised. And I said, yes, I can help them. So, and then hiring people speaking the language, also breaking the barrier or the myth of saying, like in the South, you are bilingual if you speak Spanish and English, but they are multilinguals who speak many languages. Being bilingual is speaking two languages. And there are people speaking more than just English and Spanish who are not considered as a bilingual. But also how the tools you have in the office and the stuff I was saying and the policies and the procedures. So how do you make sure that people coming into the office or online can have equal access to your services, no matter the language they speak. So I just thought that is something I can do beyond what I was doing at Bridge. I was advocating for that because sometimes, like our people, if they need housing, you don't have to consider as clients for Bridge. They are your clients, even if they are Bridge clients, but they are your clients. You have to put infrastructure in place to help them. And then how you help people grow. If they speak English is their second language or third or fourth, how do you help them to grow in learning the language, learning the culture, learning the professional language about what they do in personal development or professional development at the workplace? So these are the things that we will discuss about. And also, how do we not stereotype people because of their accent? I cannot tell you how many times I have been asked, where is your accent from? But when I'm speaking in the room, I say, how many people do think they don't have accent? So we all have an accent. So these are the things I want people just to be aware, self-aware, that we all have an accent. Having an accent is not a bad thing. And the most important is to make sure you communicate and people understand. But sometimes it takes a long way. How many people, your classmate, you say, oh, I learned French in school, I learned this in school, and poquito. So we have to go from poquito, or petite, or small, to bigger. So my dream is to see American schools. They are teaching other languages, not as optional, but as must have, because we have to get to the level of producing professionals who will serve the clients, no matter the language they speak. And people, when they learn young, they can just assimilate those languages like water.
And we talked about too because I've studied several different languages because I'm just fascinated by them, and I had a dad that studied a ton of different languages, but it helps so much to understand another person when you understand their language. It's just an amazing way of being able to understand their frame of mind because of how, just by nature of how our grammar is formed, our words are formed depending on different languages. It helps so much to just understand that person a little bit better.
Yeah. And I think when we are talking about the schooling, what is needed and what is not needed, I think the language learning is. If you want to champion where you are and you are listening as a teacher, or you are a professor, or you are a dean, just, I tell you, try it. And don't worry about the budget. Decide, and then the budget will come.
So you said that we have a ton of languages that are spoken in the U.S. If you had to list for like Southeast United States, what would be the top languages that you feel are really important?
So I think one of the things besides Spanish, Arabic, I think Swahili is one of them, and some Asians, Chinese. So me, I would start from like the 12 languages spoken in the United Nations, and then I would promote those ones. And then depending on the localities where people are, and also we have to invest in teachers. But the way we invest in teachers, because people say, oh, we cannot have teachers. So because you are waiting at the late level, so you have to start early when the children, and we can start now. When children are young, they can assimilate many languages. And then we can also include in the teaching program the people who are born in those languages who are here. So I think it's not a matter of lack of resources. I think probably people didn't consider the importance of including those languages in our teaching system or learning system.
What would you say? Because I'm imagining, you probably come across this every so often of, the typical caricature of Americans who are born and raised here, that if you're coming to my country, you should speak my language, and not, which obviously, like, I don't agree with. But how do you have that conversation with someone who's in that mindset?
So I think everybody wants to be heard, understood, and they try. And there are some people who will learn the language, they will learn English, or they are not capable to learn that language. And I applaud America for putting adult education, even if it's not maybe enough in rural areas or somewhere, but I applaud America to have that program. English as second or third, or English learning, they are starting to change the name. But I think, and this is one of the things I talk in my upcoming book, master the language. Try to master the language so you can understood. And so, like, I cannot do the business in America if I don't speak the language, mostly. So, or you can lose one side of the clientele. So you have to try also to see at that level of language. But I tell you, there are people who will never learn this language because of the age and the capability of learning. But I want to tell people that also people who are foreign born, they try their best. They try their best. I have seen even the children being interpreter for the parents, and the parents going to English classes. But if you are listening to this, I think mastering the language, you want to communicate in it. It's also it's like a matter of self-development. I consider that as self-development. And I tell you now, sometimes when I have the Swahili speaking, I was listening and speak some words, and I say my Swahili is kidogo kidogo, but I could give some guidance, or I want to understand what they say. And then with the global economy, there are people, they are traveling here and there, even Americans. So I think the people who travel the world maybe can be the agent of change. The struggle they experienced when they went to other countries, and how. But now also when you trade and you read instructions in manual for something which is made in another country, so you have to understand what does it mean. And so it's language is a tool of development, if I can say. This is why I cannot wait. My grandson, he started to learn my native language, English. I will teach him some Russian. So I will make sure that he grows with all what he can assimilate at the early age. So it's a conversation people should have, and then find resources to promote languages. But I think young people who want to have fun with all the children of all age, I think they can be the champion of this program.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Now you're making me you're inspiring me to start learning Swahili, because that's one. I had a goal before before the end of my life, that I will have learned a language from every major family of languages.
Wow.
That's been one of my goals. So, I
Yeah.
learned, obviously, learning Spanish. I now have, Romance language, and I learned, Japanese in school, and I learned German in school, and I studied Old Norse, the Viking language, just out of
Yeah.
curiosity. But so I have more continents than I'm. So, anyways,
Yeah,
it's
so you see, for example, I graduated from Ukraine in 1991. But when I see what is happening now with the wars, I want to be able, because I count Kiev as my second city, I want to be going back
Yeah.
for the Ukraine rehabilitation, offer what I can offer when peace will be there. So I have to now sharpen my Russian again.
yeah.
Yeah.
How has that felt, though, considering your close ties to Ukraine and everything that's going on?
Heartbreaking. And I have a friend who was my associate director. She's from Ukraine, so we're talking, asking about what is the situation there. So, to tell you the truth, it really revived my situation when I saw genocide in Rwanda. So every time when it started, I went to the TV to see how people are rushing, surviving, and seeing all these lines of refugees fleeing. It's painful. It's painful. And now people also are inviting me to talk about environment and migration, since they knew that I used to be the Minister of Environment in my country. So there are things sometimes you don't think. Now people were rich, they had their houses, and now they start from scratch, and the trauma associated. We have seen how children are separated from the parents. So it reminds me when I was forced to flee and left my children behind. So sad. They are in my thoughts and my prayers, and I pray for peace and the end of that war.
Have you been involved at all locally? I mean, I know you officially left Bridge in June, but have you been involved locally with people who have fled to this area?
I met one family before I left Bridge, and I was speaking Russian. I did give hugs, and we were talking, and I felt good. But there are also other people who are fundraising. Some of them attended the World Refugee Day celebration or so with some items, and I had to purchase some. I know some friends or so who are saying what are the resources which are there, and I can guide them about the resources which can help people on the ground or people who are overseas who might come here in the U.S. So that tie to me is very crucial, and it's just sad. But I'm hopeful that the situation will normalize.
Yeah, hopefully
Yeah.
sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that at least this period in the year now, we're not hearing about it quite so much in the news, but is very, very much still going on and still a huge issue.
Yeah.
And so I think for people who have been thinking about what are other ways that we can help, I mean, what are some of the primary ways that you usually recommend people help in those types of situations where people are fleeing?
So when people are fleeing, the most important thing is to show the sympathy. And I know there are people who are collecting things and who are welcoming them in their houses, and that is a good thing. If you have a small space or an extra bedroom in your house and you can have a family, because the housing is another crisis in America. So the affordable housing is when we had Afghan families, and the Ukrainian will be the same, and regular refugees, or even people who are moving. I heard that many people from California are buying complexes and companies. So I think collecting first aid things, and sometimes you refer them to the Compassion Coalition or the churches or associations, that would help. But it's good to be educated about different resources, but also show them that we are sympathetic, we care about them, and who is a religious person, you pray, you use your rituals to see how you can pray for the peace, and then missionaries who can go maybe where the refugee camps are in Europe or somewhere, just to help in a way. I know some people are collecting those items to send them there, but there are also people who can help them in the refugee camp. What I want to offer, for example, is how those people can integrate in their communities. I'm planning to see how I can work with organizations that are helping with resettlement, since I have been in this position, in that situation, so I can help even from far by sharing ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Could you share maybe a couple of what that looks like?
So you see, there are many professionals like me. So I want to. We were talking about networking, for example. How do you help them to heal, not just or to help them materially, but with their mind, with their intellectuals. So how to help them to network, how to help them to know where other languages, resources, and other people who are more welcoming are, and then also to encourage them, to find a way they will heal the process. It will take the time, but be grateful. That they are in life, they are alive already. So it doesn't matter, maybe their houses are destroyed or they lost the ones, but they survive for a reason. So the mindset, the right mindset is crucial now. Sometimes we focus more on the material and we forget about the mindset. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, if they are need a therapist, sometimes don't think about that, and maybe it's culturally not appropriate, like where you were before. But people have to know how to seek help also in those situations. So I'm thinking to see the organizations that are involved. I talk with my friend from Europe. We sometimes brainstorm, and sometimes also you say it's unfortunate, for example, that Black people were not well treated during that journey, and they are not benefiting the same benefits like Caucasian or white people. It's so sad, but I just wanted to call upon to organizations serving all the people in the same situation and treat them the same way. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So were you talking about, you mean people fleeing Ukraine who are not Caucasian?
Yes.
Yeah, that's something hasn't been talked about at all.
Oh, yes, it happened.
Hardly ever.
It happened, and I think the lawsuit also was against United Nations Health Commission. Some people were thinking about that. So it was unfortunate, but it did happen.
Yeah.
And then when they go there, some other get scholarships to go in school, and then they want to send other people back home. But if they went to school, there is a reason they went to study there. You cannot send them back home because the goal and the reason why they did go there is not fulfilled. So that is sad, but it did happen.
Yeah. I guess I should say I'm not entirely surprised, but it's incredibly unfortunate that happened, and especially considering the situations people were in, that it's one of the worst things you could ever put a human through.
Yeah.
And it's still, your level of safety was determined by the color of your skin.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
And this is one of the things, another myth also I want to tell people that it's not true. Refugees are not coming to take resources. Mm-hmm. There are more than enough resources for everyone on this earth. But our mindset, I think, are the scarcity mindset, or not thinking that we have life abundant, is something that have make you have fearing of people are coming to take, but they are giving too. And if you were in their situation, you need help. So we have to treat this as a humanitarian program. So because you don't flee for fleeing, you have a danger, you escape. And then
Right.
when you get to a safe place, the welcoming community should help you to overcome that situation, help you to be on your feet and then grow. Yeah, and you benefit, they benefit.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's something I know that I think we talked about in
Yeah.
your first interview was
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
refugees are can help enhance the community so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one question I wanted to ask, because I know people will see photos of it on our website for your episode, is you wearing one of your traditional gowns from your home country. So I wanted you to be able to share with everybody, because they'll be able to see it, like what that represents.
So wearing imikenyero is what they call it. So when you go to a festivity or something you like the most, you want to share the culture, and part of the culture is costumes you wear. And when I go to weddings, for example, like my son's wedding, part of it is like wearing that cheerful cultural dress our grandparents did wear. And this is part of my identity, I told you. So integration means you keep the values you brought to this country, and then because I want my grandson, who is born in America, he's an American, he wants to know the culture, the values, what we are eating, what we are, the language we are speaking, what we are wearing, and this is why at some occasions I put on some African costumes so people can know that I have attachment to Africa. And some would say, how can we have this? And I tell you, my friends, when we had my son's cultural wedding, for example, and church wedding, they did dress like us and they loved it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, or do you hope that you'll be able to send your grandson to Africa to be able to see where his family came
I
from?
hope that he will go one day, and I hope I will go too one day. I hope that I can go back one day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because you're not able to go back. You've never been back since you came here,
No,
right?
since 14 years.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you two can go someday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It will happen.
So the one thing that I want to make sure that everybody knows about, because you're doing all of this amazing work and it's a wide spectrum of things, but at the heart of it, I think it's all about helping people see that there's so much that they have to give. And helping people see that every human that they come into contact with has
Yeah.
something to give.
Yeah.
So what are the best ways for people to connect with you?
I guide people all through my website. This is where you can make an appointment with me, Drocella.com or www.drocella.com, or you can email me. I made it easy, Drocella@drocella.com, and then you can message me on social media. And also, I'm a networker. We will meet here and there. And just spread the word. If you need a speaker, you need a coach, or your friend need a speaker or a coach, and you can swap and you can collaborate, I am here. But remember, you are worthy and deserving, and your self-worth is not determined by time. Your self-worth is not determined by time.
Thank you, Drocella, so much. And I can't wait to see the global impact that you're going to have.
Yes. We have already touched people globally, and now I have time to scale it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
And you are doing that too, because people with the social media, they can go and visit Let Her Speak. So I think you are doing amazing work, and I thank you and producer for having me today.
Thank you. This episode of She Speaks is brought to you by our amazing partners at First Horizon Bank. She Speaks is produced, edited, and scored by the very talented Travis Tench at Oak Hill Audio. If you loved the episode you just heard and want to support Let Her Speak's mission of elevating real women's stories, don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share at Let Her Speak USA. Together, we will make our voices heard.